teachers, colleagues, pianists, and friends. Today we're going to talk about how to teach the very beloved Arabesque by Johann Burgmüller from his Opus 100. It, of course, sounds like this. Students love this piece. Many teachers are tired of this piece. It's included in so many piano books that I know of because it is so good for students' technical development and because students love playing it. To that end, this piece is included on my Method to Masterworks resource, which is a spreadsheet of historical repertoire found in method books, such as Piano Adventures, and then correlated with what historical repertoire series you might find those same pieces in. It's intended to help you bridge the gap between beginning method book study and into intermediate historical repertoire. I'm looking at this today in the Green Masterwork Classics Book 4, done by Jane McGraw, which is one of my favorite series to use with students who are transitioning into intermediate repertoire. But again, this piece is included in so many books. I'll be sure to link several of my favorite editions in the description of this video, and do check out Method to Masterworks at the link that is there. This is, of course, well loved because it's fast in a minor key. Students love this kind of fingery stuff that sounds exciting and a little bit even powerful at the end. And the title and the swirling 16th notes are reminiscent of visual arabesques that would have been used in ancient tile work. So I'll put a couple of photos up here on the screen if that's inspirational or something you hadn't thought about how the title relates. So, since this piece is so well known, I thought what I would do is actually give you a demonstration of a typical student performance, since we've all heard it at recitals and in lessons and maybe at evaluative events, and then give you some specific practice techniques to cure those student ailments or prepare your student to go home and prevent those student ailments the next time you're teaching this piece. Before I do that, we'll just mention some general characteristics. Yes, this is an A minor. We have A minor and C major kinds of little scale patterns and chords. We do have 16th notes in this. This might be one of the earlier pieces that your student is playing with 16th note rhythms. It's a great piece for that because they're just all the little 4 16th note groups. There's no 8th note, 16th note combinations or dotted rhythms with 16th notes, so it's really great for that. It is easy to keep a steady tempo if you can technically handle it. We do have varied articulation between the hands, so sometimes one hand is playing staccato, like the chords in the left hand at the beginning, while the other hand is playing slurred, and so it is really good for that development as well. That's one of the things that I don't think people always think is a teaching point in this, but it is in fact. We have plenty of dynamics and sforzandos, and there are several Italian terms in here, so this is good for vocabulary building for your students, even if they don't remember all of them after they play this piece. We have leggero, which means lightly, and dolce, which means sweetly, and risoluto at the end, which means, resolved, that you're going to play this with resolution at the end. So lots of things to think about in general. So now let's talk about what a normal student performance sounds like. Things usually go quite well at the beginning. Little confusion over the first ending and second ending. And then we're back to playing well. And then it really falls apart. Okay, you get the idea. The left hand really struggles to play lightly and quickly like the right hand did the 16th notes. The other main problem spot is right at the end. So if I start at the second ending before the last line, students struggle with those two leaps at the end, which is totally understandable. Students entering the intermediate level have not, navigated the keyboard quickly many times at this point, and so they will need to practice that. So let's talk about practice techniques for the B section, where the left hand plays 16th notes. The good news here is that it's very, very patterned. You play the same patterns over and over again. It's even sequenced. So you start with this, and then you sequence that, going to D minor. So I would encourage your students to just kind of memorize those left-hand patterns so that then we can think about technique. It's really hard to think, intently about your technique when you're still reading the notes and fumbling around where they are on the keyboard. So once you've got that, in your fingers, the first problem with this is that the left hand is moving into the treble clef and into the middle area of the keyboard. And so alignment is actually quite difficult. And one of the things that I see, especially if students are sitting too close, they literally can't bring their arm in front of their torso. So make sure they're sitting at a nice good distance from the keyboard, sitting, solidly here in the middle. And then you can actually practice it with the left hand an octave too low. You would not perform it this way, but that allows for really nice alignment for the left hand. This is kind of normally where your arm would lay. And then imitate that coming up the octave so that your arm is still behind your hand. Anytime you're twisting, you're just making all of that much more difficult and not working with the body's natural alignment. So then once you've moved it up and you've got your arm behind, it's really important with this kind of passage work that the hand has a beautiful shape and that the first joints are firm. And this is, of course, the bane of most piano teachers' existence. I don't have a magic cure for this. It's something that we have to work on from the beginning and as students progress. But if they do flatten out, this is one of the main things I tell my students. If they play with a very flat hand, it's impossible for them to play as fast and as clearly as they can if they use a rounded hand shape with firm fingertips. So find that good hand shape, make sure the two in particular is not collapsing at the joint, and then just kind of go back and forth. I didn't use any individual finger movement. I just let them roll back and forth. Same thing with the 5-finger patterns going up. You just roll from left to right. And as long as your fingers are standing firm, they can just roll and play cleanly at that point. In particular, that number 2, like I said, needs to be tall and needs to be heard. Sometimes I just hear it kind of like mumble across, so they have to listen for number 2. All right, if your student is really struggling with not being able to hear that clearly, or if they can't, get those fingers to work, then all staccato practice can help with making sure they understand and hear what's happening and giving a little impulse on each note. That would be a different technique than just rolling back and forth, but it's another option to try. And trying both things allows your hand to experience both things and listen and figure out what works best. Same thing with all marcato or accented. Also, using dotted rhythms draws our attention to what notes might not be speaking out clearly. You can do long, short, or probably more helpful in this case, short, long, because that helps you identify the notes that are usually passed over too quickly. And then lastly, I just want to say with this section that the ending is a little bit harder than the beginning. Students typically are fine at those, and then they kind of lose their steam as they get to measure 18, 19. So using backwards practice of playing measure 19 into 20, which is easy, and then playing 18, 19, 20, and then going back to 17. So they just get enough practice at the end. And I'll just mention without any demonstration that the coordination for the two hands is a little tricky there, so students tend to avoid that spot, and you want to send them home telling them you do have to practice that spot because it is tricky, so make sure you work on it right from the very beginning. All right, so those are some ideas on the B section. At the end, the issue is simply the leaps. So I have some ideas on how to practice these so that your student can go home equipped to really do it. First of all, they have to know the last chord. It is two different intervals. The left hand is a fifth and the right hand is a sixth. And that is, I think, some of the big problem with this. At this level, students should be encouraged to be finding those intervals on the keyboard just by feel, not by looking at where their fingers are. So you can just practice finding 6 all over the keyboard. I've been playing long enough that my hands just know the shape of a 5th or a 6th. Your left hand can practice finding 5ths. And then feel those 2 together. Make sure we're really clear, sorted out in our brain. Right hand 6th, left hand 5th. The good news is both of your pinkies are on A, so you can look for A and find those 2 intervals. You can do that coming from your lap. See how quickly you can get into it without staring and stopping. Then once you've got that, you can find the pattern, the position you'll be before that, and then just practice jumping from there. Once you've got that, you can actually add the notes and treat that low A like a springboard that propels you up to the higher chord. Ideally, that would be one movement for students, not play this and then move and then stop and then play the chord. So that's something as a teacher you will have to coach your student through in the lesson is, okay, play that, jump, don't stop, just, crash into it, and encourage them to try it. Even if they play a wrong note, try just going straight there. Can they do it? Sometimes they're surprised by what they can do. All right, then there's one more leap if we back up one measure. So they have to get good coming from here to the top note E, playing your A minor 5-finger pattern, and then jumping. So same thing, I would back this up, play the last measure, play the last 2 measures, and then play the last 3 measures with the 2 leaps that are involved there. They have to play that from memory. They've just got to know that, it's a very easy pattern. And like I said, we're memorizing the interval feel of the last chord. So, take the music away, look at the keyboard, feel how it feels, practice those jumps with your eyes closed, or if your student doesn't like to close their eyes, which I have several who don't, just ask them to look out the window or across the room while they play so that they're relying on that spatial, physical recognition and not relying on their eyes. Now, they will use their eyes once they're actually playing this, but if you can work on both ways of finding the notes, they're going to be more reliable under pressure. I hope that gives you some suggestions on how to train your student to practice the Arabesque by Burgmüller. Don't forget to check out the link to Method to Masterworks in the description of this video, and I wish you all the best in your teaching and playing.